Jovan, Buha! Buha!
Yo, I'm Jovan Buha, NBA reporter for Buha's Block, and welcome to another live show. Just got back from Crypto.com Arena, where the Lakers won 127-113 over the Cleveland Cavaliers. Their 50th win of the season. They improved to 50-26, back-to-back 51 seasons for JJ Redick and co. JJ becomes just the 10th coach in NBA history to reach 50 wins in their first two seasons. The Lakers lock up a top 6 spot in the West. They are officially in the playoffs. They will be no lower than 6, but I think with the way things are trending, likely the 3 seed, and with the win, nudge closer to the 3 seed. So magic number now is just 4. If the Lakers win 4 more games, they will lock up the number 3 seed, and that's in conjunction with Denver potentially losing. So if Denver loses, Lakers win 3 more times, they end up the number 3 seed. Luka Doncic becomes the 3rd fastest player to reach 15,000 career points, behind only LeBron James and Kevin Durant. He also scored 600 points in the month of March, which is the most in Lakers history, passing Kobe Bryant from the 2006 season. And for what it's worth, the 2nd most points scored in a March. Michael Jordan had the most. Then LeBron passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar for the most wins in NBA history between the regular season and the playoffs, and did so against his former team, the Cleveland Cavaliers, and did so with his son on the floor as well. So just an awesome win for the Lakers. They had not been tested these last few games, with the Pacers game and then the Nets game and the Wizards game. I guess the closest thing to a test was playing the Wizards without Luka Doncic, based on how much the Lakers had struggled in the non-Luka minutes post All-Star break. But I think they found some things that worked in that game. I think they applied some of those things into this game with the non-Luka minutes. But regardless of that, Luka just went off for 42 points and 12 assists. An incredible game from Luka. Lakers had 6 guys in double figures. Their 6 primary offensive guys tonight, the 5 starters plus Rui off the bench, all scored in double figures. And LA had another wire-to-wire win against a really good opponent, another elite opponent. And now, post All-Star break, they are 6-2 against teams with an above 600 or above win percentage, which, remember, earlier in the season, they had gone through a stretch where they lost 12 of 13 of those games. 10 of those 12 losses were by double figures, and the Lakers were just not performing well against the best teams in the league. That has completely flipped coming out of the All-Star break. 6-2. 5 of those 6 wins have been by 8 points or more. 3 of them have been by double figures. The one close game was the Denver game that went, the close win was the Denver game that went into overtime. But the Lakers have not only been winning these games, but they've been winning them in convincing fashion. After the first quarter of this game, they completely dominated the Cavs. You think about the New York game, they led wire to wire. The Minnesota game, they blew the game open in the 3rd quarter. They've had a slew of statement wins, a slew of impressive wins during this month. And they wrapped up a 15-2 March and overall have won 16 of 18 games. So things continue to trend up for the Lakers. They are reaching their peak, ascending at the right time. And I've said that multiple times this month, and the ceiling continues to raise here. And just, it's remarkable the way the Lakers are playing right now. It's truly special, and they are coming together in a serious and meaningful way here down the stretch of the season. I really think something special is happening. But shout out to the chat. Shout out to the late night gang. Appreciate Jay-Z says, Jovan, it's 1:30, mate. I appreciate you hanging in there. I did get back from the arena. It's pouring here in LA for those who are in LA. So anytime it's LA rain, the traffic and driving can be a little crazy here. But just one of those nights I was going to stay for as long as I could, for post game and whatnot. So yeah, got back a little bit later than anticipated, but appreciate the patience for everybody. And also shout out to Alma for becoming a YouTube member. Appreciate it, Alma. Shout out to Alma. All right, let's get into some of the takeaways. Then we will get into the Q&A. So Buha's big picture is March Madness. Cue the future. Lakers finished March with a 15-2 record, the second best record in the NBA in March behind OKC, who went 14-1. Lakers had the number 6 offense, the number 10 defense, and the number 5 net rating. The defense in particular has stood out, playing 17 games, because that's the important context here. The Lakers played 17 games in March, which for those who track these things, typically teams play 14 games, maybe 15 games in a month. Somewhere, like if you're lucky, if you're fortunate, you play 13 games in a month, but typically it's around 14, 15 games. 16 is a lot for a month. 17 is almost unheard of in the modern NBA, where you just rarely have a 17-game stretch in a month. That's multiple back-to-backs and playing every other day, which is exactly what happened for the Lakers this month. And not only did they have this brutal stretch of playing 17 games in 31 days, they did so against some of the best teams in the NBA. So I want to quickly recap their March and then I think there's a lot to like about the way this past month went. And again, we technically throw in the Golden State game, which was Saturday, February 28th, the day before March started. That's where we get this 16-2 stretch here. But so March 1st, Lakers beat the Kings, blow them out. And again, second night of a back-to-back, they just blew out the Warriors. They go home, play Sacramento, blow them out. That starts this little turnaround, because right before this stretch, they had lost the 3 in a row to Boston, Orlando, Phoenix. That's the low point of the season. And then they get a little bit of a break with Golden State, Sacramento, and New Orleans. They win all 3 of those games. Then they go to Denver. They lose a close game. They get blitzed in the beginning of that game, goes down to the wire, and then Jokic hits a couple big shots down the stretch. Lakers come up empty. They lose that game in the clutch. Then they come back home and they play Indiana, and that's a nice palate cleanser for them. Luka drops 44 in that game. There's going to be a lot of talk about Luka's scoring throughout this month. But really the turning point of the month to me was the New York game. And that was the game that DeAndre Ayton returned. He set a certain tone in that game. But the Lakers, from a defensive perspective, I thought defended at a level we had just not really seen from them consistently this season, or really just outside of some flashes, and doing so against an elite team in a matinee marquee game, really big game for LA, and just the biggest game of the week that week, one of the biggest games of the second half of the season, from just LA and New York going up against each other. Like from a market perspective, LA delivers a statement with that win, leading wire to wire, beating the Knicks on a Sunday. Then they follow that up with a double-digit win over the Timberwolves. And remember, that game, first half, is a rock fight. Neither team could get any rhythm going, any flow going offensively. Neither team can make a shot or execute a set. But LA breaks out in a big way in the third quarter. Luka and Austin take over, and they blow out the Timberwolves. Then they beat the Bulls. That was one of their best offensive performances of the season. Luka drops 51, nearly has a triple-double in that one. And then they follow that up with completing the homestand, a 5-0 homestand, by beating the Denver Nuggets in overtime and having a great start to that game, a terrible middle of that game, and then bouncing back down 7 with 3 minutes left to force overtime. Miraculous play, heroic play by Austin there. And then out executing Denver down the stretch in OT. But oh yeah, they followed that up by going out on the road and walking down Houston twice in Houston down the stretch in the clutch. The first game was more of a playoff-like game in terms of both teams were playing so hard and it was so physical that by the fourth quarter, neither team could make a shot. Both teams had a couple of long second half scoring droughts, but Lakers go on a run to close that game, end up winning it by 8. Second game was a little bit more high scoring. Both teams could make some shots at least, and LA ends up winning that one 124-116. Then second night of a back-to-back, they go to Miami, a really difficult back-to-back based on travel, going from Texas to Florida. They didn't get to Miami until 5 in the morning, but also with Miami's style of play. And LA not only beats them, but Luka drops 60. And to have the legs and the focus and the energy to drop 60 on the second night of a back-to-back, incredible. Like, it might be the best performance of the season by any player. It is in that conversation. Then they have the Orlando miracle with the comeback there where they're down and then they regain the lead. Orlando gets the lead back, and then the late game execution with the LeBron play that ended up not being called a foul, but then they get Luke Kennard for the game-winning 3, lose a tough one to Detroit. They were on a 9-game win streak. It was understandable to an extent that they did not quite have their legs in the fourth quarter down the stretch of that one, but come back, beat Indiana, beat Brooklyn, beat Washington, and another double-digit win against an elite team to close out the month. So this was one of the best months of Lakers basketball over the past half. I mean, I would say it probably is the best month of Lakers basketball over the last 5 years, maybe 6 years, going back to the title season. And I mean, the Lakers are just playing incredible basketball right now. I think the one unfortunate thing for them right now is the other two teams that are playing the best basketball of the league happen to be the Thunder and the Spurs, with again OKC going 14-1 in the month, San Antonio going 14-2. So you see the game difference there, right? Where OKC only played 15 games of the month, San Antonio played 16. But I mean, that's the only thing. Like, those are the two teams right now in their path, potentially in their path in the Western Conference semifinals and finals. They're going to get OKC on Thursday and then again on Tuesday. But just an incredible month from the Lakers that I think really changed the perception of this group. I mean, if we go back to the beginning of the month, they were coming off of the low point of the season with that 3-game losing streak to Boston, Orlando, and Phoenix. They beat Golden State, they beat Sacramento. Okay, that's not really going to move the needle. Like, I think those games, they showed a level of focus throughout them of from the jump, blowing those teams out and not letting their foot off their necks. But that it was still like, where is this team going? And there was some uncertainty around that point. But they just played one of the, I mean, I would say is one of the toughest months any team has probably played this season, if you're going by just the games played in the month, but then also looking at the strength of schedule. Brutal month with like, the homestand was not easy, the road trip was not easy, and they withstood it all and basically beat everyone in front of them. So, and the 2 losses they had were to 2 elite teams in Detroit and Denver, and both games went down into the clutch. So did not let go of the rope in any game and get blown out like earlier in the season, where they had several 15, 20, 25-point blowout losses to some of the best teams. It's like every game was at a minimum competitive and going down to the wire, if not LA being the team that blew the opponent out and just looked like the vastly superior team. So March Madness, like, this has been a wild month for the Lakers in the most positive way. You have Luka playing MVP, best in the world of basketball. You have JJ coaching his ass off. I think that's flown under the radar. JJ's been doing a great job pushing all the right buttons with lineups and rotations and schematics and just galvanizing the group and keeping guys motivated, getting guys to embrace fluctuating roles and fluctuating circumstances. I think you have LeBron, who came back from his absence and accepted a smaller role and has bought into being situationally the number 2, but on most night like tonight, LeBron takes 8 shots, Austin takes 16, Luka takes 26, doesn't faze LeBron, doesn't care, thrives in his role, and becomes the all-time wins leader in NBA history. Austin has been playing much better since the beginning of the month. DA, Jackson, Rui, Jake had a great game tonight. Marcus, the Lakers have clearly missed him over these last few games. So there's just a lot to like right now. I mean, Luke hits the game-winning shot. Bronny's provided some nice rotation minutes the last few games. Like, there's just been a lot to really like with this group right now. And it's just hard not to be really excited for what's to come with not only the rest of the regular season with a couple of matchups against OKC, one more matchup with Phoenix, but also just the playoffs, and to not feel really confident about what this team could do in the postseason. In terms of notable performers, we have to start with Luka Doncic, who, as I mentioned earlier, made some history tonight. Third fastest player to reach 15,000 career points. Also passes Kobe for most points scored in a month in Lakers history, reaches 600 on the dot. 42 points on 13 to 26 shooting, 6 for 13 on threes, 10 for 10 at the free throw line. So an efficient night for Luka, but also 5 rebounds, 12 assists, and 0 turnovers. 12 assists to 0 turnovers. That's about as good as it realistically gets. Also had a couple of steals. So I think Luka also started this game 0 for 3. So from that point on, went 13 for 23 from the floor. And this was more of a game for him where it was inside to outside, where he got going with his first shot was a step back against Max Strus on the right. I guess if you're facing the basket, would be the left baseline. But had a couple nice drives. And I thought tonight really, like, the decel was working great, the head fakes, the ball fakes, and then the 3-point shot started falling. And he was launching step backs and pull-ups and also getting to the free throw line. The Cavs had absolutely no answer for him. I think they really missed Jalen Tyson tonight. I don't think he would have made that much of a difference, but I think there is a difference in him versus Max Strus against Luka, especially if you go back to the previous Cleveland matchup. But Luka just torched them tonight, and it was the perfect cap to this month. I'm going to touch on Luka's month with one of my takeaways, but just didn't miss a beat after being suspended for a game. You could tell he was itching to return to the court, and he didn't have a rest excuse or a fatigue excuse, having not played yesterday. So he came in, played 34 minutes, and just absolutely dominated. Had a dunk at the end of the game, which was really fun. Got some MVP chants from the crowd, and I think there's been a shift here, with the relationship with Laker fans and the relationship with the crowd. I also think some of the MVP stuff has strengthened that bond too, of Luka being overlooked in the conversation. And it's, sometimes when you're kind of facing adversity or you're facing something that is upsetting, you kind of rally together, and it's like a bonding experience. It feels like that has been sort of, part of this over, the last couple of months. But he's playing great basketball. I mean, I don't really know how else to frame it. And JJ said after the game that he thinks that's the best month of basketball anyone has ever played in NBA history, or at least in that conversation. And he mentioned LeBron James, he mentioned James Harden, he mentioned Steph Curry as guys who have had similar types of months. And it's hard to disagree with it. We will touch on it a little bit more when we get into Luka's March, but he's playing I mean, I just think he's been the best player in the world for over a month now. Then LeBron James, mentioned him earlier, just takes 8 shots tonight, but 14 points, 5 rebounds, 6 assists, 1 steal, 1 block. Did a little bit of everything tonight. Had the vintage dunk in transition, reminiscent of his Heedle days with Austin throwing the ball backwards a la Dwayne Wade and LeBron slamming it home. But I thought LeBron set the tone for the game on the first possession when the ball gets tipped out and Donovan Mitchell is about to get a layup a few seconds into the game, and LeBron, patented chase down block, blocks the ball out of bounds, doesn't give up an easy layup. And that to me set a certain tone and showed a certain seriousness to the game for LA. And they quickly gave up a 6-0 run, and then it extended 8-2 run, but then they responded back with LeBron being a big part of that, and tied it at 13. And then from that point, the teams largely traded baskets through the rest of the first quarter until LA took control of the game early in the second quarter. But an awesome performance from LeBron tonight, and hit a corner 3 on a kick out from Luka, got to the free throw line 6 times, or 6 attempts. So a little bit of everything from LeBron. And it's nice that they didn't need, with other guys stepping up in the form of Jake and DA and Rui, they didn't need as much offensively from LeBron. And I think, especially second night of a back-to-back like that's okay for him to be able to rest a little bit, take a little bit of a step back from a usage perspective, and keep his legs fresh going into the postseason. Then Austin Reeves, 19 points, 6 rebounds, 4 assists, 2 steals, and a block. Just 6 for 16 shooting, and that was primarily because of the 3-point shooting, which continues to be an issue for Austin. Now, his legs have just not really been there lately, and I'm not going to lie, I'm a little bit concerned with that. It's been an extended stretch here of he started the game 0 for 5 on threes, made a 3, then missed his next couple, and then finally hit his last one to finish 2 for 9. But I mean, inside the arc, he went 4 for 7. So you take that's above 50%. And I think, second straight game where it was like inside the arc, he was getting to the rim, the footwork, the decels, the creating contact and creating separation in the paint, using his shoulders, using his guile. That was working great. It's more so been like anything outside 16, 18 feet for him recently. He just has not had the lift and the legs, and it's just not looked like the same player physically, but he's still finding ways to be effective, whether it's the rebounding, whether it's the passing, whether it's the defense. 3 stocks tonight. I thought he got the primary Harden assignment with Jake LaRavia on Donovan Mitchell, and I thought he held up fairly well in that assignment. So Austin's still finding ways to contribute, but I think the Lakers are going to need him to be at a certain level offensively, and I think a big part of that is going to be his jumper, and particularly from deep. So that's going to be something to monitor going into the OKC game. Then DeAndre Ayton, 18 points, 9 rebounds, an assist, a steal, and a block, 8 for 13 shooting. I thought he had a really interesting game because I thought the first shift he was pretty rough, and Jared Allen took it to him. Jared Allen, 18 points, 9 of 11 shooting. I think at 8 points while DA was out there during that first shift, and he did score on DA multiple times. Very odd Cleveland offense. It somehow devolved into just let's ISO Jared Allen at the top of the arc or around the elbow, and just let Jared Allen cook DeAndre Ayton or cook a switch. And he had a lot of success in those matchups, but the Lakers were able to contain that in the third quarter. He didn't take a shot in the third quarter, only ended up playing 19 minutes for the entirety of the game. But I thought Jared Allen was taking it to him. He had a couple offensive rebounds. He had a couple finishes on him, and you were kind of wondering which way is this game going to go. But in that second shift, in that second quarter, it reminded me DA's had a couple of these performances recently where the first shift doesn't go as well, but there's an element of resilience from him. I think about like the Minnesota game. I think there was another one recently, might have been the Brooklyn game, or maybe it was last night too. I'm maybe mixing those two games up, but like dominant second quarter, and with the offensive rebounding, with the finishing inside, and I thought he really left a mark. Like 6 of his 9 rebounds were offensive rebounds, and during stretches of LA not shooting well, DA was creating second and third opportunities and also putting a couple of those in himself. So I thought after a down opening shift, he bounced back and was awesome the rest of the way. And I also thought him switching onto guys, like there's still an element of, I think, guys scoring on him at the rim and smaller guards beating him off the dribble, but the Lakers went to switching 1 through 5. And I don't think it's fair to ask DeAndre Ayton to keep Donovan Mitchell or Dennis Schroeder in front of him. Like those guys are just too quick and athletic for basically any center. So I thought he did well in, like, he forced Mitchell into an air ball. He had a steal. He had a block. So I thought he bounced back well and ended up having a really impactful performance. And then might have saved the best for last, because Jake LaRavia, 14 points, 7 rebounds, 1 steal, multiple deflections, which are not reflected in the box score, but 5 for 5 from the floor, 2 for 2 on threes, 2 for 2 at the free throw line, dunked on Jared Allen's head top, and had another nice dunk in transition, hit a couple of threes, 2 for 2 on threes. Tonight is one of those nights. I will say I see the Jake LaRavia resemblance. I will acknowledge it. I will not deny it tonight. But Jake LaRavia, I mean, just, he was awesome tonight. And I think he's generally awesome on the defensive side, and the multi-positional defense, the rebounding. He's a master of the margins. The deflections, the steals, the pokes, diving on the ground for loose balls, offensive rebounds, the cutting, the connecting passes, the screening. He just does a little bit of everything, but the Lakers have needed more from him offensively. That's been the thing holding him back from a larger role. And I don't expect him to go 5 for 5 or 2 for 2 on threes every single game, but it's nice to see that, especially against a good team and with Marcus still out, him stepping up as a starter and rewarding JJ for having that trust in him. I just thought Jake, I mean, to me, this was one of his best games of the season. And I mean, he had the unenviable matchup with Donovan Mitchell, who had a very quiet night, 10 points on 4 for 10 shooting. And Jake was the primary guy there. And Jake forced him into some tough looks and also just didn't let him get some tough looks, or just looks in general. Then off the bench, Rui, 14 points, 6 for 8 shooting, 2 for 3 on threes. I thought he had a couple of mini runs there, late second quarter, late third quarter, which really gave the Lakers momentum to close both quarters. Lakers, for some reason, we're putting him as the point of attack guy on James Harden and Dennis Schroeder. I was having flashbacks to last season and early in the season where it's like, Rui's not a point of attack guy. Like, don't deploy him in that way. But he did have some nice perimeter defensive possessions and forcing guys or containing the ball. But like, he did foul James Harden on the 3. And it's like, all right, let's pump the brakes there. I know Marcus is out, but there have to be better options than this. But back to back solid offensive games for Rui, and it's nice to see him more involved offensively and looking more like himself. Just a real weak side weapon. A couple of those, really just a lot of like driving kicks into Rui as the weak side guy, and then either corner threes or attacking the closeout, and then pull up jumpers or whatnot. Like I just think that's a real weapon for the Lakers. Luke Kennard, quiet game, 2 points, 1 for 2 shooting, but had a couple nice assists. With him, it's always the driving kick variety of attacking a closeout and then kicking out to a teammate. But quiet night overall for him. But like the Lakers didn't really need more from him. Then Jackson also had a quiet night, 4 points, 3 rebounds. This was more of a DA matchup than a Jackson matchup, and I think the Lakers are going to have those scenarios down the stretch here and into the playoffs. And also, I think with Jake, like one of the advantages that Cleveland has over the Lakers is their speed and their athleticism. So LA needed to approach this more with their power and strength. And I think you saw that with Jake and DA and LeBron and Luka. But there's going to be matchups where the Lakers need more speed. And those are maybe matchups more for a Luke Kennard, a Jackson Hayes, etc. So tonight, I think that the Lakers relied on some of their bigger rotation guys, because if you're looking at the entry point into Cleveland's defense, they're tiny on the perimeter. Like that's one of the things that really stood out tonight was like Max Strus should not be the primary guy on Luka. Donovan Mitchell and James Harden are 6'3" and 6'5", and like not very physically imposing defensively. Then Keon Ellis is like, I really like Keon Ellis, and I thought he had a solid game, but like he's 6'5" and under 200 pounds. Dennis is 6'1", 6'2". They just have a pretty small perimeter group that I think you can hunt and attack in switches and impose yourself physically against. And then Bronny, I thought, came in and gave them some good, it was part of a good defensive shift. The Lakers won his minutes. They were +5 in his 7 minutes, which included him playing in garbage time, which the garbage time group once again lost their minutes. So his plus minus was slightly affected by that. But I mean, I'll say this, stat of the night is going to be 15-2 in March, because that is remarkable. But another stat of the night, Lakers had a 50-40-90 performance tonight, which is rare for this group, particularly at the free throw line. I actually think the 90% at the free throw line is the toughest thing for this group, more so than the 40% shooting and 50%. They walk into 50% shooting. They're that great. But tonight, 54% from the floor, 42% on threes, 92% at the line. That's when you're cooking with grease there. And then in terms of the 3 takeaways, going to go through these quickly before we get into the Q&A. Takeaway number 1 is recapping Luka's March. So looking at Luka Doncic's March, Luka played in 16 of the 17 games for the Lakers. Didn't play in one of them due to suspension, but averaged 37.5 points, 8 rebounds, 7.4 assists, and 3 stocks, 2.3 steals, 0.7 blocks, 3.7 turnovers, but shot 49% from the floor, 39% from deep, and 79% at the free throw line. And he shot 39% on threes on 13 3-point attempts per game. That is utterly ridiculous and insane. That is some Steph Curry stuff. Like you just don't see guys shoot on that type of volume in the 39-40-ish% range. I mean, that's insane. And so again, 37.5, 8, 7.5, 2.3 steals, 0.7 blocks, essentially 50, 40, 80 shooting splits, just a hair under each of those percentage is. And I mean, put it this way, Luka averaged more points than minutes. He averaged more than a point per minute this month. Just think about that. Like that is ridiculous. That is insane. That is not normal. And so when JJ says this is one of the best months anyone's ever had, it's hard to quibble with that. Whether you look at the raw averages of nearly 38 points, 8 rebounds, over 7 assists, and over 2 steals. You look at the percentages. We could look at his advanced metrics here in terms of look at with Luka on the floor, Lakers had a 123 offensive rating, which was the highest among the rotation players. Unsurprisingly, with Luka defensively, they had a 109.9 defensive rating, which was lower among the rotation guys. Looks like it was actually the second lowest defensive rating among the rotation guys. Only Luke was lower, but there's actually a big gap there between Luka and Luke by almost 7 points per 100 possessions. And then there's a cluster of between Jackson, who is second, and Luka. They're separated by 2.5 points per 100 possessions. So there's a cluster there. Luka has played with Luke a lot, and that, I think, some of those like Luke Rui groups, if you look at the other guys who are lower in defensive rating, it's Luke, DA, and Rui. Those are the other three guys in the bottom four. I think that there's a correlation there. Like Luka has played in some more offensive-minded groups with not as much defensive personnel, so I think that sways some of the numbers. But with him on the floor, they had a 13.1 net rating, which was tied for third best on the team. Interestingly, behind Marcus. Well, not it. Marcus, we know Marcus is a plus-minus net rating monster. Lakers are just ridiculous with Marcus on the floor, but Jake was actually second on the team in net rating this month. But Luka, usage percentage 38.2%, 59% or 58.8 technically effective field goal percentage, 62.9% true shooting percentage. Those are all awesome numbers, and I mean, I don't know what else to say about this month from Luka, but it was a special month, and this is in the conversation for best basketball he's ever played. I think you can compare this to that 2023-24 season in Dallas, and that season resulted in the Mavericks shocking a lot of people and making the finals. And I think like it's not out of the realm of possibility here with the Lakers. Then takeaway number 2 is JJ Redick deserves his flowers. I think we've focused a lot, and rightfully so, on Luka. We focused a lot on LeBron and Austin and the role players, the centers playing well. Rui's been shooting well. Luke's been shooting well. Jake had the big game tonight. Marcus has swung the season as a starter and playing more minutes and being healthier up until recently. But JJ has pushed so many of the right buttons. And I think in this month in particular, when I look back at the various defensive game plans he had, like looking at New York versus Minnesota versus Denver versus Houston, and just pushing these, like he's been so good. I think one of the things that's really stood out with JJ's coaching over the last 2 seasons has been his ability to have these opponent specific game plans on short notice. And you don't always see that with every team. Like there is the basic scouting and like, yes, you want to force this guy left, you want to force this guy right. You don't want to help off Rui and Luke, right? You want to help off Jake or Marcus or Vando, right? Like there's like the basic scouting that every team does, and every team has an extensive scouting report. But then I think there's an extra layer, an extra level to this that JJ displayed down the stretch of last season and has continued to display down the stretch of this season, and mixing it up with either switching more, which earlier in the season didn't work for the Lakers, but recently it has been working. But throwing in zone looks, throwing in trapping looks, selectively trapping, playing off of, like the Lakers are very diligent and detail oriented in terms of which shooters they're willing to play off of. And they run the numbers and decide, hey, these are the guys we're going to live with. Take as many open threes as you want. And I think that they have a pretty aggressive approach defensively in that regard, in terms of rotating over, trying to protect the paint, and being more of a team defense from a rim and paint protection perspective, rather than relying on their centers or their forwards or whatnot, right? So, I mean, that still is one of the weaknesses of this team, is the rim protection. They are one of the worst rim protection teams in the league in terms of allowed field goal percentage at the rim. If you can get to the rim against the Lakers, you're probably going to score. However, getting there has been much tougher this past month, where you have to go through a thicket of arms, and the defensive playmaking with Marcus and Luka and Jake and Vando and Austin. I think Austin's been much better defensively, and I think LeBron has had more pep in his step defensively, and DA has had some good defensive games. Jackson's been a monster on that end. He's been blocking shots, altering shots. This past month plus from Jackson has been something defensively. We're seeing the athleticism with Jackson has always been there. That's part of his archetype, but it's primarily been on the offensive end. You have not really seen Jackson. Jackson's never been like this monster shot blocker, despite being like a 7-foot volleyball player. It just is not really translated to the defensive end. It is starting to translate to the defensive end, and I think we've seen some real progress with Jackson over the past month or so. So JJ, getting this group to play 17 games in a month and be a top 10 defense, first and foremost, the credit goes to the players for being out there and executing the game plan and playing with a certain motor and a certain attention to detail and focus and sustained energy. But it has to also go to the coaching staff. And I think as we look at the Coach of the Year race, I've not heard anyone really mention. I think I've heard a couple times JJ is like an honorable mention guy. And I'm not necessarily saying he should win Coach of the Year, because I think similar to MVP, this is a really deep pool of Coach of the Year candidates. Joe Mazzulla, most people thought the Celtics were going to be a play-in team. I thought the Celtics were going to be a play-in team before the season. I had the Celtics in the 9-10 game. They are the 2 seed right now and are probably going to win in the mid 50s. Win 54, 55 games. Detroit, I think most people had them in the top 6, but no one had them number 1. A lot of people didn't have them top 4. They might win 60 games or high 50s, and JB Bickerstaff deserves his credit for that. And then in the West, Mark Dagnall kind of just gets slept on, but they've dealt with as many injuries as anybody among the top playoff teams, and they just continue to chug along, are going to win in the mid 60s again. San Antonio, I had them as a play-in team, not the number 2 seed. So Mitch Johnson, I think, deserves a certain amount of credit with that. There are other, and then Jordan Ott. I think Jordan Ott's another one where Phoenix, for most people, myself included, was not even a play-in team. That they were a bottom 5 team in the West, and they've come back down to earth a little bit. They have dealt with some injury stuff, but them being the 7th seed is Jordan Ott has set a certain culture there. So all those guys deserve recognition and a shot at Coach of the Year or to be on the ballot, but so does JJ Redick. This is back-to-back 51 seasons. A lot of people had the Lakers as at best the 5 seed, but most people had them in the 6 to 8 range. People the over-under was 46.5. They're going to clear that. I mean, they might get 54 wins. They could get more. They could get 56 wins. I don't think they're going to win out, but if they win 54 or 55 games, JJ really deserves a long look, on the ballot for Coach of the Year, because I think he's done a terrific job. And I know there are things to quibble about. He should have pulled the plug on the Rui starting lineup earlier. Yes. I mean, he should have never started it. That's my take on that, but whatever. He started it, could have pulled the plug earlier. Took a little bit to figure out the offensive hierarchy, took a little bit to figure out some of the best bench groups, but even within that, the Lakers had the 15-4 start. They were treading water as they were dealing with a bunch of injuries during the middle portion of the season. And as they've gotten healthy, JJ's pushed a lot of the right buttons. He has got this group to play their best basketball on both sides of the ball. He has passed a lot of these schematic tests with flying colors. And I just think he deserves to be in this conversation. And speaking of schematic tests, this brings me to takeaway number 3. Lakers Thunder preview on Thursday. This is, for my money, the biggest game of the season for the Lakers. Maybe next Tuesday will be the biggest game. I think it's between one of these two games. And reason being, this is not a controversial take by any means, but it's actually a pretty vanilla take. Like, the West still runs through OKC until proven otherwise. And whether it's somehow matching up in the second round or more likely a theoretical matchup would happen in the conference finals, the Lakers, to get to the NBA finals, will have to go through OKC at some point. And OKC, back-to-back 60-plus win seasons, they have had a bunch of injuries to their top guys and have withstood that. They have the current MVP favorite in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. And that game, and they're also 2-0 against the Lakers this year. So that game on Thursday is going to be a huge game. I think for the Lakers, it's a measuring stick game of, can you beat OKC? Or with both teams like relatively healthy, we'll see if Marcus is back. We'll see who's out for OKC. They seemingly always have at least a couple guys out. With both teams, like with their relatively full strength rotations and also playing for something. LA is still playing to lock up the 3 seed. OKC is playing to stave off San Antonio for the 1 seed, with both teams playing for stakes. And to a lesser degree, there's the whole subplot with the MVP race. How does it go? How does it look? How does Luka look against OKC's army of guards and wings they're going to throw at him? How does Shai look? I'm sure JJ's been trying to cook something up for how are we going to slow down Shai and how are we going to contain OKC's offense against us, which in the first game obliterated them. And then in the second game wasn't as effective, but they still dropped to 119 on the Lakers. So this is a huge test for JJ and the coaching staff. It's going to be, I think, a potential moment for, like, with how Luka's playing and how the Lakers have been playing. If they go into OKC and beat OKC, I think that is a potential moment that does swing or sway the MVP race. I don't think that it's going to lock it up for Luka or make him the favorite, but for all of, like, there has been an uproar of Luka support from Lakers fans and Luka fans, and you going at it with the media members over the last couple of days. And if Luka goes into there and has a 40 points, 8 rebounds, 10 assists, and the Lakers win by 8 in OKC, that's the type of, with how close things are right now, that's the type of performance and the type of outcome and result that I think could continue to push the MVP race in his favor. So huge game from that perspective. But again, also just, I think for the Lakers, it's like, okay, you beat Cleveland, you beat Denver, Minnesota, New York. Like, you can make a case you're better than all those teams, right? Like, from a record perspective, you are, or you're right there. This team's been the best team all season. This is the team you're going to have to beat at some point. So I'm really fascinated with Thursday's game. It's, to me, the biggest game of the season. Again, maybe Tuesday at that point, depending on the result of Thursday, it could set up Tuesday to potentially be bigger. And for both teams at that point, it could be like, if Lakers win, they lock up the 3 seed. If OKC wins, they lock up the 1 seed. So again, maybe this is the second biggest game of the season, but definitely biggest game up to this point, and a true measuring stick game where there will be grand overreactions in either direction, depending on the result. Like, if the Lakers win, it's going to be, well, the Lakers should want to play OKC now, and like they could beat them in the playoffs. Or if the Lakers lose, it's going to be, well, Lakers have no chance and they should avoid OKC at all costs. But for me, just a couple things on both sides of the ball. Number one is going to be for the Lakers, ball security, because when the Lakers have been at their worst this season against good teams, and in both OKC matchups, we saw this, they are turning the ball over. It's a lot of live ball turnovers. It's not protecting the ball against ball pressure or random traps and blitzes on the sideline or near half court. And that's something that I think Austin's been the primary guy who has struggled with that, but Luka has had his fair share of turnovers in those instances as well. So both of those guys, I think, are going to have to look more like the version of them we've seen in March than the version of them we've seen earlier in the season against OKC, San Antonio, Phoenix, because they both have struggled with turnovers in those prior matchups. So I think that's going to be a big thing. Like Lakers have been one of the best teams in terms of turnover percentage in March and post All-Star break. So it'll be the best turnover forcing team versus one of the best offenses in ball security teams right now. So if the Lakers can keep the turnovers low, like let's just say 13 or under, I think that bodes well for them offensively. If OKC turns them over and it's a 17, 18, 20 turnover game, I think OKC likely wins. And then defensively, I'm really intrigued to see what LA throws at Shea. If Marcus is back, is he able to be thrown into the fire there and start and play 30 plus minutes and guard Shea? Or is he on a minutes restriction? Is he coming off the bench? Like, how does that play out? If they don't have Marcus, I would assume they probably start Jake again, but for as good as Jake is defensively, I don't love Jake on Shea. I think Shea is too quick for him and has too much craft, and that'll probably be a matchup where he gets into foul trouble. But I'm interested to see, like, are they going to double him? We know JJ doesn't love the doubling. And I also think they've had some success doubling, but this is not Houston's offense. This is not even Minnesota's offense. OKC is prepared for that. OKC has been seeing that all season. And I think their counters to that are much stronger than some of the recent opponents the Lakers have had. So you have to pick your poison of if you're going to live with Shea in isolation, and that's been a pretty efficient play this season, or you're going to double him or trap him and blitz him, and then you're going to have to play 4-on-3 or 3-on-4 defensively. And the Lakers rotations are going to be paramount there. And it might just come down to how does Jalen Williams, big Jalen Williams shoot, or how does Chet shoot, or how does Lou Dort shoot, right? Like the Lakers are going to play off some of their shooters, and might end up just being a game where OKC gets a bunch of open threes, and it kind of comes down to whether those guys make shots. But I'm excited for that game with the way the Lakers are playing. I think they have a real shot to pull off the upset. But we will learn a lot on Thursday about this team and their championship viability. With all that said, let's get into the Q&A here. Again, shout out to Alma for becoming a member. Appreciate you. Jeremiah versus the world. Thank you for the super chat. Picked a great game to go to. Luka hit 15K. 2 Laker playoff, or numbering them. So 1, Luka hit 15K. 2, Lakers are playoff bound. 3, LBJ most wins. 4, JJ 100 wins. You did pick a great game to go to. That was an awesome game. That was a fun game. Just a lot of history tonight. Also worth noting, Rui reached 5,000 career points. So deserved shout out to Rui there. But just a lot of history was made tonight. Jay, thank you for the super chat. Man, this team, I don't know, something feels special. Something special feels like it's brewing. Can't wait for OKC Thursday, a big measuring stick game. I agree. This to me has gone beyond, like, sometimes you'll see a team close the season strong. You'll see a team catch fire in February or March, and there's a little bit of fool's gold with it. This does not feel that way to me. This feels legitimate, and especially with the way that the bracket is breaking in the Lakers' favor in terms of they're either playing a Houston team who they just beat twice in Houston, and I think all of the top 5 teams outside of Houston want to play Houston in round 1, or they're playing Minnesota, who they've had success against this season and is now dealing with, Ant was just dealing with an injury, came back, but that's something to monitor. And then Jaden McDaniels is now week to week. So whether it's a compromised Minnesota or just a floundering Houston team, both of those first round matchups play into LA's advantage. Then you get to the second round potentially, and I think they would be on paper underdogs to San Antonio, but there's an experience factor there where, sure, they have Harrison Barnes and Luke Cornett and De'Aaron Fox and several guys who have been to the playoffs. Only a couple of those guys have been out of the first round, but look at the primary guys of Wemby and Stephon Castle, Dylan Harper, Devin Vassell, Keldon Johnson, like those guys have not played playoff basketball. So that's some of their, I mean, that's most of their best players, right? Three of their top four players have not even played in the playoffs yet. And so San Antonio might be the exception to the rule and might go on a really deep playoff run, conference finals, maybe they win the championship. But the Lakers with LeBron and Luka, and even guys like Austin and Rui and Vando and Luke Kennard and like several of their primary guys have, DeAndre Ayton's made a finals before. Like most of their rotation has been to the playoffs with the exception of Jake LaRavia, who was, played small roles in first round series. So outside of him, basically everybody else has been to second round and beyond. Some of those guys have been to second round and beyond with the Lakers and, go back to the 2023 Western Conference Finals run. So yeah, that is something that's in LA's favor. It doesn't mean they're going to win the series. It's just that's partly why I've been confident in that series in terms of, I think a lot of people would pick probably San Antonio in 5. I've said San Antonio in 6, but if the Lakers keep playing like this and they beat OKC, then that starts to be, is it San Antonio in 7? And then at that point, if it's going 7, do you favor the side that has Luka, LeBron, and Austin? So there's a lot to be encouraged by. Jay, again, my wife and I travel to LA for a first round playoff game every year. A month ago, I wasn't as excited spending the money. I now can't wait to watch this squad, LFG. That is awesome. And kudos to you for traveling out here. I'm trying to think of which game I would advise you. I think if you can go to game 1, game 1's just always fun. I know it wasn't fun last year, but in general, like game 1, just the feel out process of a series and it's sort of like the first couple rounds of a boxing match and both teams are starting to feel each other out and figure each other out. And I think game 2 is also fun because that's the adjustment game I'm noting game 1 and game 2 because the Lakers are going to be a home court team at this point. They're going to be the 3 seed or the 4 seed. They're almost certainly going to be the 3 seed. I would be pretty surprised at this point if they drop to 4. So assuming the Lakers are the 3 seed, they'll have home court advantage. And I mean, you could even if they're playing Houston or Minnesota, I still think it goes at least 5. So maybe you want to go to game 5 to watch them clinch it. But game 1 or game 2 depends. Do you want like the opening bout or do you want the rematch where the adjustments start? Both games have their argument. Cage Britt, thank you for the super chat. I love this team. Can't wait for Thursday. #77 MVP. Yeah, this is, it's just been fun basketball. Like that's the biggest thing for me is it's just been, there was a point in the season and honestly not that long ago. Like it's crazy. It feels like it was very long ago, but the Boston loss was 5 weeks ago. Like the scheme of a season, like sure, the grand scheme of a season, you could say that, I guess that's a lifetime, but wasn't that long ago that we were like, this team gets blown out by Boston, loses a tough one to Orlando, loses a tough one to Phoenix. And it's like, what, like the season felt like it was teetering. And from that point on, they've won 16 of 18, been playing the best basketball, not just of the season, but again, probably the best basketball any Lakers team has played in 5 or 6 years. So it's been just a crazy roller coaster, but we've been enjoying I guess the ascent right now, and we'll see at what point does it drop. If it does drop, maybe it doesn't drop. Maybe the drop is championship parade. Alma, thank you for the super chat. Hey, Jovan, with Cuban finally confirming that what we all knew, that J Kidd was part of the trade, expecting Luka to drop 60 on Dallas's head on Sunday. Yeah, that the truth finally comes out that we all knew, that Jason Kidd was aware of the trade. Surprise, surprise. And Mark Cuban also regrets selling the team to the Adelsons and Patrick Dumont. Surprise, surprise. Luka's gonna. Maybe, you know what? Maybe out of the goodness of his heart, he'll drop like 43, just for Mavs fans to spare them another protest. But or maybe you could argue he does drop to 60 to give them a show and remind them of what they're missing, although they're all aware. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how Sunday's game goes. Easy peasy. Thank you for the super chat. Can any of the East teams even compete with any of the top West teams in a series? Luka for Western Conference Player of the Month got to be the easiest pick in years. And of note, I think he's going to be because right now, one thing that I feel like hasn't been talked about enough with the whole MVP race that makes the race a little bit easier to compare and dissect in some ways is that the top 4 guys are all in the West. So part of this can be looking at player of the week and player of the month, because those guys are all in direct competition with each other. It's not like a Cade Cunningham or Jaylen Brown situation, Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, etc. in the East competing with them. It's directly each week and each month, only one of those 4 guys is winning that award. And I believe Luka has the most player of the week awards among the 4. And I think if he wins player of the month for March, he would then have the most player of the months too, because he won in January. I think I don't think anyone has more than 1. I could be mistaken on that. Don't hold me to that. But if he has 2, then at that point, I think he's at least tied for the lead, if not in the lead. So that is another thing in his favor. I would say, and this goes back to a conversation we were having last night on the show with, I believe, Peter. The only team I could see competing with one of the top West teams is Boston. They just beat OKC, and they were having a really competitive game in San Antonio against San Antonio before Jaylen Brown got tossed from that game. So I think Boston is the one team that at their ceiling, I think can go toe to toe with the top. Like, I think, for example, I would favor OKC against them. San Antonio would be a really interesting one, because I also, when we think about like a finals matchup, right? One thing that I feel like sometimes people overlook is when we talk about teams a lot, we think through like the probabilities of them hitting their ceiling, right? So we can, like, for the Lakers, there's a pathway to the conference finals. There's maybe even a pathway to the finals or winning a championship. But obviously, like, the probability is lower than like OKC, for example, right? So like we factor that in when we're making these calculations on ceiling and most likely outcome, et cetera. But when we're talking finals, if you make the finals, you've had a really cupcake schedule, a really cupcake path. But like realistically, if you're making the finals, you have clicked to a certain degree where you're close to your ceiling, right? You're firing on all cylinders to make. You just won 3 straight playoff rounds. Like, things are going well. So I think if it were a Boston-San Antonio finals, I would give Boston a real shot to win that finals, if not even potentially favor them, just because of the experience there of that core has won a championship together in terms of coaching staff, top 3 players. There's some institutional stability and knowledge. But at the same time, if San Antonio makes the finals, it's like, well, they likely beat OKC and the Lakers along the way. And like, at that point, you could throw the experience stuff out because like they've got some experience under their belt. But Boston's the only team I could see. That's why, because Peter had asked me about Detroit, and I personally would be shocked if Detroit somehow beat San Antonio or OKC or whoever comes out of the West. And same thing for Cleveland. I think I said last night, Cleveland to me is a clear 4th among the top 4 in the East. I think tonight further confirmed that for me. And then New York, they beat San Antonio in the NBA Cup championship, but I still think they would probably get stomped by both of those teams. So yeah, I mean, whether it's those two or it's the Lakers or it's Denver, I think I would pick all four of those teams over any of the East teams outside of Boston. And not saying I wouldn't pick them over Boston. I just think Boston has a shot. The other teams I think would lose in the finals. And I'll say I'm really interested to see because of, I think Luka should get player of the month. One thing I was thinking about is because, I mean, there's been a lot of Shea buzz. There's been a lot of Wemby buzz. And both those teams had, I mean, all three teams essentially tied record-wise. OKC 14-1, Lakers 15-2, San Antonio 14-2. We're really splitting hairs there from a record perspective. I was trying to think, like, is there any way that anyone tries to make, like, does Shea somehow win player of the month, or does Wemby, because there's been this late push for Wemby as MVP. But so looking at it, again, Luka, 37.5 points, 8 rebounds, 7.4 assists, 3 stocks, we'll just say. Shea, 30.7 points. Now he is shooting 56%, so 7% difference, but 37% on threes on only 4 threes per game. So Luka has a major advantage there. 84% at the line on an extra free throw attempt. But then you get to 4 rebounds. Luka's averaging double that. 6.6 assists. Luka's averaging a full assist more. And then 2.6 stocks compared to 3 stocks. And for what it's worth, Luka has the higher plus minus. Then you get to Wemby, 27 points, 12 rebounds, 3.5 assists, 5 stocks. That's insane. 1.3 steals, 3.7 blocks. He does have a higher plus minus than Luka for the month. He's shooting 51%, 36%, 85%. So I guess I'm putting it out there. Like, I think Luka should win and will win. Wemby had a hell of a month too, but yeah, I think Luka definitely had a better month than Shea. And then I think he had a better month than Wemby as well. I'm just noting that, especially with sometimes Luka not getting the credit he deserves. They just flag that for later if Wemby somehow wins Player of the Month. Connor Phillips, thank you for the super chat. Cavs fully healthy and second betting faves to win the East, and we put belt to ass. Sorry, should have said BTA. Can't wait for OKC. We beat them and we command real respect. Vibes off the charts. So a couple of things. Well, not disagreeing with you. I would say the Cavs were not fully healthy. The Cavs were without 3 key rotation guys. Jalen Tyson killed the Lakers in that first matchup. They were also without Sam Merrill and Dean Wade, who are both guys that have been in the starting mix for them with Max Strus out. So they're close to full strength. They're not quite at full strength. I think Jalen Tyson in particular was a guy that he was the primary matchup against Luka in the last matchup. And I think they really missed him tonight. I also would not put them. I know you're saying the second betting favorite. I vehemently disagree with that, but I'm not making the betting markets. But still, it's a quality win against, I think, one of the 8 best teams in the league and the 4th best team in the East. So, I would say this. I think I have more confidence in Cleveland than I do in Houston. So if we're giving the Lakers a certain amount of credit for beating a Houston, I think Cleveland's better than Houston. So like that, them versus Minnesota, I think it's close, but the Lakers also beat Minnesota. So like wherever you want to peg them in like the top 10, top 8, top 9, I would put them on like a similar level to like a Minnesota or Houston, which is a really quality win. iPod Kills, thank you for the super chat. The OKC matchups are so huge. The Detroit, even though it was a loss in Cleveland games, give me hope. If Lakers win at least one, will voters sway towards Luka? I don't think it's going to sway. So what's interesting? There's a lot of interesting wrinkles within this. Like one that pops into my head is like if the Lakers actually beat OKC twice, it makes it more likely that OKC drops to 2 and the Lakers end up playing them in the 2-3, which I would, regardless of how these matchups go, I would still rather play San Antonio than OKC if I'm the Lakers. Now, if you go 2-0 against them and tie the season series at 2-2, you have won the 2 most recent matchups and you have a certain amount of confidence and momentum going into that matchup. But I still think OKC on paper is the best team in the league and does not only that, but I also think they have some real matchup. Like some of their strengths align, like especially with the style of defense and turning teams over aligns with like some of LA's weaknesses offensively and worst habits offensively, to the point where like, I mean, I would say that, I mean, this is not a crazy take, but I think if I could pick any defense to guard the Lakers offense, I would pick OKC's defense. San Antonio with Wemby makes that close, I guess. And then offensively, I think OKC is slightly better than San Antonio, but I think I would pick OKC's defense against the Lakers offense if I had like my pick of any defense in the league to try to stop the Lakers on a given possession. I think I would pick OKC, but San Antonio is a close number 2 there. And the reason I say all that is just, I mean, that was kind of an aside. Sorry, I got sidetracked with that. But to your point about the voters part, what's interesting is there has been a sentiment out there of if OKC drops to 2, people are going to swing toward Wemby. So in a weird way, as counterintuitive as this is, there's also a possible scenario here where despite Luka slaying the OKC Dragon and beating them once or twice and potentially knocking them off their perch of number 1 and theoretically outplaying Shea in this hypothetical, that could actually propel Victor to winning the MVP, because now San Antonio would be the 1 seed, and then people would have their argument for Wemby as the 1 seed, so, or as MVP. So that's maybe a cynical take on this, but I also am a little cynical with a lot of the discourse around Luka, right? It's just, there's been a lot of negativity, and it's hard to see that really swing in a way that he like wins the award. But I think it'll sway some people. If you're on the, like I saw, I forgot who tweeted it. Someone tweeted on NBA Twitter. They were like, I'm like 35% Jokic, 33% Shea, 32% Luka, or maybe it was 32% Shea, 32% Luka. And it's like, if you're that kind of voter or that kind of, you have that type of perspective on the MVP race, an outcome like the Lakers going into OKC, and I think that one's a little bit more, I will bring this full circle with, I think that game's more important just because it's in OKC, which is one of the toughest places to play in the league. And like, if the Lakers beat OKC in OKC, I think that means more than beating them in LA, especially because they're going to not have home court advantage and need to win at least 1 game in OKC to win a series against OKC. So yeah, I mean, if they go in on Thursday and beat them, I think it'll sway some votes for some people, but I almost wonder if it starts to become this mess of Shea voters, Wemby voters, Luka voters, Jokic gets pushed out, and then it's kind of like a, 33%, 33%, 33%. We'll see, but I do think it'll have some impact. I don't want to get people's hopes up and say that it's going to lock up the MVP for Luka, because I think at this point, he still seems like he's probably number 3 for a lot of people. Like, I don't know if there's anything he could do to pass Shea and Wemby for some. Basketball, thank you for the super chat. Could just adding Peyton to this 9-man be a good summer? 30 million overpay. Braun Min, Ayton in, Jax Bird, Smart Room, Rui 13, Luke 7, use 26 on a big. Well, I don't see LeBron signing a minimum. I could be wrong on that, but so for those who were paying attention last night, I said I think there's going to be a story today coming out with LeBron and Cleveland and his future, and that did come out from ESPN. And in that story, there was several possibilities for LeBron's future in terms of potentially retiring, staying as a Laker, going to several other teams. Another thing within that was that the Lakers would like to keep Jackson Hayes, Luke Kennard, LeBron, Rui on or with a certain, I think the wording was like at a certain price or something like that. So I think 13 would be in that price. I think my read on that anecdote within the story was basically like, we want to keep Rui as like a non-taxpayer guy or less. We don't want to pay him over market value, which if you just look at who has cap space, like no one's paying Rui unless they want to Bruce Brown him and it's just like a short term, let's just eat up some money because we have to spend money. None of the teams that have cap space are like actually going to be pursuing Rui and trying to pay him more than the non-taxpayer MLE. So, which is about 15.5 million. So I think that's like probably the ceiling for what the Lakers would entertain with Rui, which would be a downgrade from his current contract. He's making 18.5 million. So that would actually be Rui taking a pay cut when he's in the prime of his career. And like, how does he feel about that? But in terms of how this all works within the cap, so 30 million for Watson, Ayton opts in, you have the Jackson Bird rights. Assume you're keeping Austin here. Smart with the room exception, so that's 9. Rui for 13 million, Luke for 7, so that's 20 plus the 30 from Peyton, that's 50. And then you say use the 26 pick on a big man. I like this plan. My one caveat here is just I think LeBron, if he stays in LA, he's going to have to take a pay cut. There's no scenario in which he's making 53 million next season. But I think the tough part for LA to navigate is that the suitors for LeBron all have built-in excuses of Golden State, Cleveland, New York, Clippers, whoever else. They can basically only offer the minimum. Maybe in some scenarios they could offer biannual or a minor exception. But like they kind of have a built-in excuse of, hey, LeBron, we really want you. We can only offer you this. The Lakers are the one team that actually have to negotiate with LeBron and actually can pay LeBron. And they could say, we want to sign you to a minimum. They could say, we want to sign you to a $10 million contract. But if I'm LeBron, I'm going to ask for 25 million, 30 million. And then maybe you meet somewhere in the middle in like 15 to 20 million. But I think it's going to be above the minimum. I would like to stay in LA. I think if they could pay him a little bit more and they settle on the minimum, I just would be surprised by that. So I think it is like if he's leaving, he's signing a minimum elsewhere. And I know you can make the counterpoint of like, well, if he's willing to sign the minimum elsewhere, why wouldn't he just sign it with the Lakers? Like, I think he's still taking a pay cut. It's just a matter of degrees there. So I would be surprised if he takes the minimum. I think it's probably going to be a double-digit million contract somewhere in that, probably closer to 15 million, maybe 20 million. But and you could still argue that that's LeBron taking a pay cut. Like I think even with him not being the same player he was last year, he's outperformed a $20 million contract. Like I mean, he made the All-Star team. Like I don't think he's been a $53 million player, but he's also not been a minimum level player. So somewhere in between those two outcomes, I think is where LeBron factors in. And that's important because then that gets into, can you keep Rui? Can you keep Luke? Do you have to pick between those two guys? You know, we'll see. Or what does the Peyton Watson contract look like? But yeah, if you just run it back hypothetically, add a 2026 rookie and add Peyton Watson, and then you probably, you'd have to move Marcus to the bench in that case. I do like that team. I still would like a center upgrade. I think DA and Jackson have been really solid, but I still view there as like, I still think there's a gap between, if you just look at the caliber of center every other top team in the West has, depending on, Hartenstein is maybe like the closest thing to them, but like Şengün, all-star, all-NBA type guy, Jokic, MVP candidate, all-NBA first team guy, Gobert is still an elite rim protector and at a certain caliber. Chet is an all-star, all-NBA candidate. Wemby is an MVP candidate, first team All-NBA guy. So I just think the Lakers are at a clear disadvantage, in my opinion, against those teams in a way that, like, especially on a Luka team, you want a certain caliber of center. And like, I still think, I think for their contracts, Ayton and Jackson have been clear hits. In general, though, I think spending $11 million on the center spot, I guess technically you could push that into the 20s with Maxey, but like, if we're talking about the actual rotation, I think the Lakers should be spending a little bit more on the center spot. Chris, thank you for the super chat. Luka really hit his prime when he turned 27. As all great players do, if you look at most legends, go through the top 20 guys in NBA history, top 50 guys in NBA history, most players peak around that age 27, 28 season, which is another reason why the Lakers should not be punting on the summer or punting on next season. I think the roster in this group is forcing their hand for next season of like, go for it this summer. But there cannot be any like gap year again or like not making a serious upgrade to the roster because Luka is that great. Ricky Burt, thank you for the super chat. I believe the Thunder are more beatable than most believe, with Jay Will not being as good / hurt. They have no scoring outside of SGA. That is a really good point. I would push back a little bit with Chet and AJ Mitchell. AJ Mitchell is he's still kind of this anonymous you know, he was injured for a while, but I think AJ Mitchell is a really, really good player. And I think we'll see how his career goes. Maybe he stays in OKC for a while, but I would not be surprised if he ends up on a different roster at some point and is an all-star level player. I think he has that potential. So, especially like having his own team running an offense for a group, I think he could do that. To your point though, Jay Will going into the season was universally considered a top 15 player. There were games in the playoffs, including in the finals, when he outplayed Shea, and you know, it was kind of like a Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown situation. And he was the number one guy offensively. So to this point, like, yeah, I think that does make them more beatable. We'll see how the Lakers fare against them over the next week. But that is a good point. Like, I think when we've been projecting the Thunder, there's this assumption that Jay Will is going to eventually become the player he was last postseason or maybe close to it. But that's far from a guarantee. And you could even argue unlikely based on how his season has gone and how his health has been. So I mean, they've still been pretty good without Jay Will. And, you know, like, so they are scary, but to your point, outside of Shea, it does become a little shaky in terms of the shot creation. I do think AJ Mitchell has ascended to a certain level of, he's pretty consistently a 15 to 17 point a night guy. I know that's not replacing Jay Will's production, but it's still like, you know, like I think, for example, to me, he'd be like far and away the fourth best offensive player on the Lakers. Like I don't think it's close. Someone in the chat yesterday said the second best. I don't agree with that, but like it's not even close. Like, you know, where he is offensively to like the Lakers supporting cast. And then Chet, you know, I don't think he's taken the leap that a lot of people expected him to take, but he's still in that 18 to 20 point range every night. I don't think he has the shot creation that you would want from like a number two if we're classifying him as that. But yeah, I mean, I'll say the way to beat OKC is you're going to sell out against Shea. You're going to force them to take a bunch of threes, and they go through these cold spells and can just miss a bunch of, like, they don't have dead eye shooters now, or in the primary rotation. Now, the flip side is like they could put in Jared McCain, they could put in Isaiah Joe, but now you're putting in smaller guards who are more defensive liabilities, who like they're top 9, pretty strong defensively. Once you start getting into spots 10, 11, 12, they get a little bit weaker defensively, but they lean more offensive. And that's where, if you're putting in McCain or you're putting in Isaiah Joe, you could pick on those guys defensively, just if only because of the size with Luka and LeBron. But those guys can't shoot. And then Jalen Williams has been coming on in a real way the past month plus. He's been shooting well, playing great basketball. So, yeah, I mean, I think in general, to your point, they don't have the same level of shot creation necessarily that they did last year. But I do think AJ Mitchell is an option off the bench they just did not have last year. Much higher level of bench score than anyone they had in their rotation. Chet, I think, has been better than last year. And then they also have now Jared McCain. Isaiah Joe has played well. Like, they've got some bench options, but it's definitely still going to come down to, to some extent, like Lou Dort, Alex Caruso, Kayson Wallace. Like, are those guys making shots and making plays offensively? And if they're not, then OKC gets forced into some offense-defense decisions. Shabugan, thank you for the super chat. Sure, he averaged more points than minutes, but he hasn't solved the government shutdown. That's why he's 24th on my MVP ballot under Bronny James. Well, I mean, behind Bronny, I can understand that, but yeah, I mean, I don't want to. You guys know how I feel about Luka, and you guys know how I feel about the whole MVP conversation. I don't want to relitigate it every show, but it's been. I mean, he said it. He said it in. I think he said it in Spanish the other night. That like the better he plays, the worse he ranks at MVP, and there's kind of been some truth to that. And then Shabugan is. Thinking for super chat, is Dagnall really doing a coach of the year worthy job if they're predicted to come in first and they might come second? So I feel like sometimes I know there's a lot of anti-OKC sentiment, especially among Laker fans, and I totally get it. And that I if I was just putting a fan hat on, I fully understand it. I have monitored this exercise or at least since the All-Star break. And at the All-Star break, for those who remember, I did an episode of Buha's Block looking at how injured the Lakers had been relative to the rest of the top of the West. And they were third in games missed with their top 10 projected rotation guys. Because I don't want to, for the Lakers, I don't want to be counting like Adu missed a game or Maxey missed a game as like injuries, just like for some of the other teams, if they have back end guys who are out. I'm not counting that. I'm like, assume you're healthy, your top 10 rotation, how many games have you missed? And OKC had missed the most games, and they have continued to miss the most games. So on the one hand, I hear what you're saying, and like they have a certain amount of talent and depth, and that could work against Dagnall in the Coach of the Year race. That could also work against Shea in the MVP race. At the same time, J-Dub has been out for a huge chunk of the season and also not himself for basically the entirety of the season. They've had a bunch of injuries with Caruso, Hartenstein, Dort, Chet's missed time, AJ Mitchell missed a bunch of time. Like they've had a lot of injuries to their top 7 or 8 guys that I think I would say this. I think if it was any other team, I think we'd be talking about it a little bit differently. I'm not trying to cape for the Thunder here. I just think it's been a little bit overlooked and a little bit dismissed as just like, well, they have all this depth, like they're okay. They can miss all the. It's like, no, they've actually been pretty injured, and they still are going to win 65 games or whatever, despite that. Whereas, like, I mean, if J-Dub was the J-Dub of last year, I think they won 70 games. Like, and if he played 70 games this season and was the same player as last year, I think they win 70 games. Like that, I think it makes that dramatic of a difference for them. So I do think Dagnall is a really good coach. I'll say this. I would not have him as my coach of the year. I think for me right now, my coach of the year would be Mazzulla, just because I did not see any feasible way that group would win 50 games or be where they were, or where they are in the standings. But I think JJ's in the mix for me too. I think Mitch Johnson's also up there again. Like, to me, Mazzulla and Mitch Johnson are the two situations that have overachieved the most relative to preseason expectations. But JJ's also in that mix. I think most people assume the Lakers would be better than the Celtics and the Spurs. If you look at just survey like all the preseason projections from ESPN, I know people throw out the Kevin Pelton one. That was a random simulation that he used. That was not actually Kevin Pelton's projections. But if you look at like the preseason projections, NBA.com, ESPN, Sports Illustrated, The Ringer, The Athletic, Lakers are projected to be better than San Antonio and Boston. And so I think those two situations, like they have overachieved relative to expectations in a serious way. And I think Mitch Johnson and Joe Mazzulla deserve a lot of credit, but JJ deserves a lot of credit because the Lakers have overachieved as well. Dagnall, I just think he's a really good coach. I think he's a top 5 coach in the league. He's not my coach of the year. So I'll say that. But I think he's done a coach of the year worthy job. I think he's in the mix. And if you have him on your ballot, I don't have an issue with it. I think if we knew how many injuries they were going to have, I don't think we would have projected them as the 1 seed or to win as many games as they're going to win. Like, to have as many injuries as they've had and still win 65 games, I think even based on their depth is a testament to the infrastructure. Danica, thank you for the super chat. The Mavs had the second best clutch record after the Lakers during the 2023-24 season. Hopium, haha, but not taking this team and season for granted. Yeah, look, like I still think you could put, like, there's an argument for the Lakers as high as maybe number 3 in the league, and there's an argument for them as low as maybe number 6, just in terms of the entire league, right? Like, I think they're somewhere in that 3 to 6 range, depending on how you feel about Boston, how you feel about Denver, how you feel about Detroit. I think those are the only 3 teams I think you can make arguments for ahead of the Lakers. So enjoy it. Like, they're going into, I would say in like the aggregate, going into the playoffs as a top 5 team, playing right there with the top 2 teams in the league in OKC and San Antonio. And we'll see if Thursday's matchup throws some cold water on some of the optimism, but maybe it just fans the optimism flames even more. And all of a sudden we're talking crazy after, no, we'll see how we're talking after Thursday's game. It could go one of 2 ways, but yeah, this has been a great season. Sarah Talks Ball, thank you for the super chat. How does tonight stack up in game of the season? That's a great question. I mean, there's been a lot of great wins lately. I think for me, it's tough. Sometimes it's tough for me to separate like my own opinion, because there was the super chat earlier where who said it? Was it Connor? Yeah, Connor said second betting favorite. So I would disagree with Cleveland being viewed as the second best team in the East, but like if we're going off of that, then I mean, this is really up there. I would say for me, the Denver win is the most impressive of the past month, because I think Denver, like, they're rounding back into form. They've looked really good when they've had their starters in primary rotation. I think that's a legit team, that also one of the teams that has a player who can go toe to toe with Luka. I think it's only 2 or 3 other teams in the league in the 4 MVP candidates. So beating Denver the way that they beat them and out executing them in the clutch, I mean, that was the most entertaining game of the year, right? I mean, you have the late comeback, you have the Austin free throw, you have the Luka game winner. That was, I think, the most entertaining game of the season for the Lakers. So that one for me would be the game of the year for LA. New York and Minnesota, I'm actually higher on both those teams than Cleveland. So like those games carry a little bit more weight for me. Then the way that they beat Houston in a couple ways, the Miami win with Luka dropping 60 is also up there. The Orlando win and the execution down the stretch, like there's a lot of games up there. But given like how definitively they won this game, I would put it probably above both Houston games and Orlando, because Orlando's now fallen off a cliff. I think beating New York is more impressive, and I think beating Minnesota is more. So yeah, I would say maybe it's 4th for me in the month, behind Denver, Minnesota, and New York. I still think those are the 3 best wins over this stretch, just from a actual like team, opponent perspective. But I mean, Luka dropping 60 against Miami second night of a back-to-back is also up there. But I guess if we're just judging based on opponent, I would say Cleveland is the 4th best team, in my opinion, that they beat in the month. Now, it was more convincing than the New York win. It was probably even more convincing than, I mean, it was the most convincing of those 4 wins. So if you want to argue for it in that sense, but sometimes I think it's good to have a game where you're tested in the clutch, and to come out of that against Denver and New York was a pseudo clutch game. I think I would put those three ahead. Chavo, thank you for the super chat. Any update on Smart's injury and what are the chances he plays Thursday? No update off of tonight. The only thing was off of last night. JJ said the Lakers are going to, he's day to day, but they're also going to be patient, waiting for him to feel 100%. So knowing Marcus, I know he wants to play on Thursday, and that's a huge game for him. And I mean, if he's available, he's going to be the primary Shea guy. So that I think Marcus has a all defense second team case that has flown under the radar. And if he could have a big defensive performance against Shea either on Thursday or on Tuesday, that could be a nice feather in his cap for, the argument for second team all defense. I would it's tough to say. I would maybe put it like 45 he plays, 55 he doesn't play. So I would err on the side of him probably missing Thursday with how cautious the Lakers have been with him. And again, like JJ saying like 100%, that it feels like that's something he's working towards, and it's not like when he feels right or when he's like close to 100%. It's 100%, which could take some time here with both a hip and an ankle injury. So I lean toward him probably missing, but that's with the current information I have right now. That could easily change by tomorrow. Gary Singh, thank you for the super chat. Pelinka should have gone all in this year, trade the first. I mean, you know how I feel about that. You're not going to get a disagreement from me. I mean, at the deadline, I'll say with the action at the deadline or lack thereof in some regards, I don't know what the move was for LA. Like you were not getting Herb Jones with a first. I don't even know if Wiggins was still a possibility at that point. And I don't think you were getting Gafford or like, maybe could you have gotten Nick Claxton? I'm just thinking through like some of the guys that we had discussed around that time. So I think the move was more actually last summer, doing something and executing a trade in the summer. I think the Lakers' apprehension toward executing summer trades for whatever reason, it's been 4 straight summers without a trade or without a real trade. They've traded in the draft or whatever for or bought a second round pick, but like a real trade. The last real trade was the 2022 offseason when they traded for Patrick Beverley, August 2022. So it's been almost 4 summers or 3 summers going on 4 summers. And we'll see. I assume they make a trade this summer, but yeah, I agree. Ooh, this is a fun one. SC Lakers. Ring this year more impactful for Luka or LeBron? It's a really good question. So I think Luka, and the reason I think Luka is because I think it would have a similar impact to, like, we've seen the guys who get the first ring over the last, like, let's just keep it to like the last 15 years. But Dirk getting his first ring, I think put him in a certain, like, Dirk had a certain perception of him. I think unfair, but like Dirk had a certain perception around him that he disproved by winning the 2011 title. I mean, you could even throw LeBron in there, I guess, like getting his first title, but LeBron went on to win multiple. And I think LeBron, like, he already was like the chosen one, GOAT path at that point. So he did need to win rings eventually, but like it's a little bit different in my opinion. But I'm thinking like Giannis winning a ring, Jokic winning a ring, Kawhi has won a couple, but I think winning the Toronto one as the primary guy, whereas it was more of an ensemble situation in San Antonio. Like I just think winning a ring for players of a certain caliber takes you to a certain level, and even if it ends up being the only wing, the only ring. I was combining win and ring. The only ring that Luka wins, he would go down as a champion, and I think like that pretty much puts him as like he's going to go down as a top 20 guy. It's just a matter of where he finishes in the top 20, and with more longevity, more rings, more finals appearances, etc. With LeBron, I mean, he's already number 1 or number 2 for most people. So I think I'd love to see how Skip Bayless would react to this. that would be something. But I mean, maybe there's a small segment of people who flip from Jordan to LeBron with the GOAT debate if LeBron gets a 5th ring. But there'll still be people like I think if you're on the Jordan side, I don't think LeBron getting a 5th ring like really swings you. Maybe there's some people on the fence that a 5th ring, with the context of how old he is, and let's just say he's like the 2nd best player, like he's more the number 2 in that series than Austin. He has the better series than Austin, and he's like the 2nd or 3rd best player in the series behind Luka and potentially whoever else they're facing. Then it's like, that's a legit, because there will be like, if LeBron is like the 3rd option, there will be people who oh, it's not a real, like, Jordan won 6 rings with 6 finals MVPs and he was the primary guy. And like, it'll start getting into that, which I don't really think is fair there. But if LeBron is like the number 2 and plays a meaningful role, which theoretically he would, assuming the Lakers win a title here, like, yeah, I think that would matter a lot for him. But I think most people have made their mind up in terms of LeBron versus Jordan. I don't know if a 5th ring really swings it. I think a 6th ring would then the Jordan 6/4, you can't argue it at that point. But obviously it's unlikely he wins 2 more rings, but who knows? For Luka, though, I think it puts him in a certain class where like it's kind of being held over his head a little bit here recently with Jokic has won, Shea has won, Giannis has won. Wemby looks like he's going to win at some point with that group. Like, I think he's the one that, he's been in the finals, but I think it's go time for him, right? He's in his prime. He's playing the best basketball of his career. So I think it'd be more impactful for Luka, and it would put him in a certain status and certain tier, because he's already, 3rd fastest to 15,000 points. He's on a trajectory to go down. Luka could be a top 10 player by the time all is said and done. And that could be even selling him short. It just depends on how many championships he wins, his longevity, keeping up his prime over a certain amount of time. But that's it. I think it'd be great for both guys, right? Like there's no like loser in this situation, but I think with all the discourse with Luka, him winning a championship, I think would shut, or theoretically should shut, a lot of that up. I don't know if who knows, maybe people will still continue to criticize, but oi to boy, Bam's 83-point game is the game of the season. Let's be fair. It's arguably the performance of the season, I guess, although I don't want to get into the ethical nature of that. For me, Lakers Nuggets is up there. I would say that OKC Denver game where Jokic and Shea were going shot for shot down the stretch was up there for me. That Minnesota Houston game down the stretch was pretty crazy, about a week ago. But yeah, there's been several games that I think, OKC Boston was a really good game that this past one. But I think Lakers Nuggets is up there though. Jay Spares, thank you for the super chat. Oh my God, I just woke up at 4 a.m. to catch a flight on the East Coast, and you guys are live. Late night gang for life. Let's get that ring. Yeah, I've completely buried the lead here, but got the late night gang shirt again. This is to be clear, it's not the same shirt as yesterday. This is another sample. So got the second shipment in, but Really excited about this. This one is a little bit more comfortable, so I'm kind of leaning toward this shirt over last night's shirt. But yeah, we're going real late night now. The Wannabe GMs podcast. Thank you for the super chat. Brown signs for MLE money, and LA generally runs it back, assuming prices don't get crazy with Rui, Reeves, Ayton, etc. Will that use all their money? No. So you could do something like, I think for now, I'm still penciling in Ayton as opting in. I don't think Ayton has the market to opt out yet. That could change down the stretch here or in the playoffs. But for now, I think the safer bet is Ayton opting in. So let's say they rescind the rights to Rui and LeBron to create the cap space. And depending on the moves they make, depending on what happens with Ayton, depending on what happens with, they could waive Bronny or decline the option with Kobe Buffkin. That swings things a little bit, but let's just say hypothetically. And then there's also the 2026 pick, which has to be factored in here of, I think it's going to be projected high threes in terms of like that first year salary. But let's just say hypothetically it's around 50 million for argument's sake, 52 million. With LeBron, 15 million, let's just earmark that. Rui, let's say 15 million. Let's just say 14 million. So 29 million with those two. Then Smart, you could use the room exception and maybe sign him to 9, or maybe you use part of that for Kennard, maybe let's say 7 for Kennard, and then you re-sign Marcus 10 million, 12 million, something like that. So that gets you to 39 to 41 million. So yeah, I mean, it does run out quickly there. I think if you, I think it's, I've been saying, I think it's going to be tough to keep all of Marcus, Rui, and Luke. I think you're probably picking 2 of the 3. I think even the reporting today from ESPN seems like Marcus and Luke are slightly bigger priorities, and Rui is very much just a price dependent option, which I think checks out. So especially if you're bringing back LeBron, Marcus, and Luke, I think it starts to get tough to fit Rui in, because then you're almost picking between like Rui and a bench player, or no Rui and a starter going into that slot for the remaining money, because we just ran it like Braun 15, Rui 14, Marcus, let's just say 10. You're trying to be a little conservative here. That's 39. And so if you're at 50, 52, you got like 11 or 13 left over. You take out Rui's 14, all of a sudden that jumps up to 25 to 28 million. And now you can go sign a starting level player, or maybe even like a couple of starting level players, depending on how you can split up the money. So and then you could also, I mean, there's other moves. The Lakers could try to get off Dalton. They could try to get off Vando. They could waive both, decline the team option on Kobe, waive Bronny. But if you're keeping LeBron, it doesn't really make sense to waive Bronny. Like, I don't think they would do that. So just talking through different scenarios here in terms of how they could create more cap space. But I think if you do keep, I don't want to say it's like LeBron or Rui, because I think there is a pathway to keeping both, but it does get a little tricky if you're trying to do LeBron, Rui, Marcus, and Luke. Like the money there, it's going to be at least somewhere between 45 to 50 million across those 4 guys. And that's where it starts to get into like, you don't really have much money left over to do other stuff. All right. One note here from, is it Moad? It says, give Braun 20 and AR 30. So with Austin, so the 2 guys we did not mention within this are Austin and Jackson. The funny thing with Austin, and I don't think anyone's made this point yet, but I think with Austin, because they're going to be using the bird rights, and I'm surprised it took me this long to even think of this point. So, the show's 2 hours into the show. With Austin, it really doesn't matter how much they pay him. Like, there is the like element of you don't want to necessarily overpay a guy and turn it into a contract that you can't flip at some point. And in general, you got to be careful of first apron, second apron, etc. But this whole like navigating the cap space and stuff is predicated on Austin being on the books with the $20.9 million cap hold. So how this all works is the Lakers make their moves with the cap space, and then at the end of everything, they re-sign Austin to whatever number he gets, and that goes above the cap. But there's no penalty to that as long as they're staying under the first apron because they have his bird rights. And then similar thing with Jackson, where they go over, he has a $4.5 million cap hold. But with Austin, there probably is not much of a financial difference of them offering Austin $30 million versus $42 million. The only thing it changes is like in the future, obviously that's a several $1 million gap in the cap sheet. And then if for whatever reason Austin underperforms or gets injured or something, that could make that contract tougher to trade down the road. But from a practical like cap space, cap flexibility perspective, because they're not rescinding the rights to Austin and they're keeping him on the cap hold, there's actually no material difference in paying him, say, $30 million versus $40 million. The only difference is it's just $10 million out of Mark Walter's pocket to Austin compared to like, there's no, well, if they sign Austin at this, then they could like, no, they're going to use the cap space, which means they're at the cap, and then they're going to go over the cap with Austin and Jackson. And, who knows, maybe they save, I don't see Rui or LeBron, them holding on to the rights, but that's, so I haven't seen anyone make that Austin point yet, but because I think a lot of the Austin conversation has been framed under the premise of, well, we got to be careful how much we pay him because that could impact like our flexibility or what we do. And that's just not true. Like at that point, it's just a matter of how close are you to the first apron and like how much space do you have under there? And yes, there's some risk down the road of, does Austin underperform that contract? Does he get injured? Or in future summers, future seasons, like every dollar does matter under the new CBA. So I'm not saying it like blanketly does not matter, but the whole like Austin 30 versus 35 or 35 versus 40, it actually doesn't really matter because the Lakers are already going to have made their moves by the time they re-sign Austin. So his fit into that doesn't really matter. Then last one here from the Muad'Dib. Hope I didn't butcher that too bad. Thank you for the super chat. Who could they get for Vando's salary if they attach the first? So I actually think attaching the first to Vando would be more of just like dumping him somewhere. So you could dump him on Brooklyn. You could dump him on Chicago. You might be able to dump him on Utah or back to Utah. I think it would be more so a dump rather than getting something, because I think in this scenario, attaching the first is making Vando more of like a neutral asset. It's not a positive asset. So, I mean, maybe you could get some bench player back or something. And it's still, the team is still taking on more money, and they're doing you a favor by sending back less, and like they're taking on more, and you're giving them the first as compensation. But I don't think you're going to get, like, for example, one potential framework I've talked about is Vando in a hypothetical New Orleans trade for Herb Jones, but I think that would be 2 firsts, and people hear that, they freak out. But it's really a first for Herb Jones and a first to take on Vando's contract. It's not actually saying Herb Jones is worth 2 firsts. It's actually, we want to get off Vando's contract. And actually, Herb and Vando are pretty similar in terms of like Herb's making a little bit more before his extension kicks in. But that's like an example of a situation where I think you could parlay Vando into trading for someone, but I think you're going to have to attach more. Like Herb is a more aggressive trade, I guess. But I mean, maybe attaching more is Dalton. Maybe you could do Vando, Dalton, not for Herb, but just like Vando, Dalton, and a first for something and get something back. But from a salary perspective, Vando's at around $12.5 million. So that's, that's somewhere between a high to mid-level bench player in a lot of scenarios. But yeah, I don't think Vando in a first is getting you much back. I think it's more so that's the cost of getting off Vando's contract because he still has 2 more years left. But I'm going to wrap there. I appreciate you guys for rocking with me for nearly a couple of hours. I'll be back tomorrow at 11 a.m. for Lakers Collective. And then I'm actually going to be back later in the day at 7 p.m. with Raj Chapalu of Silver Screen and Roll and Offside. We'll be talking about the win. We'll be talking about the Lakers March, Luka, MVP, the OKC game, a bunch of fun stuff. So we'll be going live at 7 p.m. Pacific time tomorrow, or technically later today. But appreciate you all. For those watching on YouTube, please be sure to hit that subscribe button, turn on channel notifications, and like and comment on this video. For the over 900 of you in the chat right now, it would mean a lot if you have not yet subscribed to hit that subscribe button. For those listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your podcast platform of choice, please be sure to follow, download, and leave a 5-star review. I'll be back tomorrow. I will talk to you all then. Shout out to the late night gang. Shout out to the chat. Lakers are rolling 15-2 in March, 16-2 in their past 18. Luka's playing like an MVP. Excited for Thursday.